I need you to do something for me today and every day moving forward. And the first thing is I need you to repeat after me. We are not alone. Are you ready? We are not alone. Come on, guys. I didn't hear any of that from any of you. You guys in the back, come on, baritones up. Come on. We are not alone. Excellent. The second thing I need you to have you do is to look around you. To the right of you, to the left of you, in front of you, behind you. Because this is the beginning of the first scale of resilience. By knowing your neighbor, by knowing that your friends, family, and everyone that is around you is the beginning of resilience. It is not the buildings. It is us. So that's the first scale. I'm going to need you to help me define the second scale at the beginning of this presentation. And I'm hoping that by the end, we'll be able to arm ourselves with how to move forward. We're also going to enlist the help of two little boys and a glass of water. They're going to come back later in the presentation and let us know that they can help too. So, Frank mentioned post-Sandy. Well, I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of you in the audience and a lot of great people throughout New York City, the region, and we're going to keep working. If we really take what you just learned about building resilience through community and apply it to the city of New York, I think we're going to be okay. If we do think about Sandy and what happened here in New York, 72,000 buildings were inundated by the storm. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced and almost 40 people lost their lives. But let's take that idea of who is to the right of us, the left of us, in front of us, and behind us, and apply that to New York City. What I hope is that will break us out of the silos that we exist in, the myopic nature of New York, that this is the center of the universe. This is who we are. Everyone comes to New York because we have all the ideas. Well, let's break out of those silos. Let's break out of our neighborhoods, the boundaries of our city, the boundaries of our state, and think about what happened with this superstorm. In fact, when it did make landfall, it hit this entire region, this whole Boston-Washington corridor. 20% of our GDP is represented in this land area. So Rhode Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Delaware, and entirety of New York State were all hit. We've started to engage at this regional level through all of these wonderful people that I've met along the way, and we'll continue to do that. But what I'm asking you to do is take one step back with me, and let's broaden that lens just a bit bigger to understand what meta-resilience does mean to a city like New York. If we do take a step back and consider Hurricane Sandy, it hit 13 states up the eastern seaboard. 650,000 buildings were affected, inundated, loss of power, wind damage, more loss of life, and hundreds of thousands of people pushed out of their homes. Now you're starting to get a picture why I'm saying we're not alone. But let's take even a further step back, widen that lens, if you will, and take a look at this hurricane at its inception. It started on the west coast of Africa as a tropical depression, also called a Rossby wave. When it makes its way across the international, or the ITCZ, Intertropical Convergence Zone, and gains enough power, it turns into this storm system. This storm system hit Haiti, Dominican Republic, and in Cuba, 69 people lost their lives. The devastation was so widespread, but you don't hear that in our newspapers. But this is the same system that made landfall here and flooded our basements, right? So we are not alone in the aftermath. We're not alone in our suffering, but we're also not alone in how we find solutions. We should be looking to countries that perhaps experience this at a far greater rate than we do. They've built for this or know how to recover from this because it's not a common occurrence here. with that, let's look at who perhaps our community is. In 2012, this is the map of the world with nations affected by natural disaster. If you take a look, 32.4 million people worldwide were displaced from their homes. Those people without a home after a disaster event in 1 year. That's not a small number. So the 100 or 1,000 so people that registered for housing assistance here after Superstorm Sandy contributes to this number, but also pales in comparison to what people experience around the world annually. So we're getting an idea of who our neighborhood is and who our community is in response, right? But let's layer onto this one other aspect. How about the nations that experience man-made disaster, terrorism, warfare, civil strife? And the displacement that you have here is 28.8 million people. That's over 60 million people worldwide. That was last year. The numbers this year are even more staggering in 2013. So how do we broaden that view again to understand where we're going next? If we've broadened our view to the whole world, the place we need to go is the future. If we step back and take a look at the future, in 2050, the estimate is 200 million people will be displaced worldwide from natural and man-made disasters. 200 million people. That's a staggering sum. Where do we go from there? Well, let's go to 2100. That's the prediction when ice melt begins to really erode our cities, where we live, right? Well, the fact is, the estimate is the 4th largest nation in the entire world will be those without a nation. 550 million people displaced by natural and man-made disaster in a single year. The year before, the year before, the year before, and after, unless we do something about it now. Together in this room, that visceral response needs to start here today with ideas. Now, we have to also look at the fact that together, this is the entire world of disaster as we know it, as of last year. Quite staggering, but let's take a look at, maybe it's a little easier to show you the areas of the world that perhaps don't have disaster. I question this data. These are from a lot of governments and not-for-profits that we've put this data together. But I guess maybe after this event, we can all pack our bags and move to Mongolia or Canada. And I love Canada. But I think we are defining what our community is when we talk about who our neighbor is, just as you did at the beginning of this. Who's in front of us, next to us, behind us? Because the fact of the matter is, these storms don't discriminate. They hit every corner of the earth. And if you take a look at the top 2 portions, the only difference between the response in China and Haiti is the writing on the side of the tents. We can do better than that. And the same superstorm that hit Cuba and New York, the only difference is that there's cars in one and there's palm fronds in the other. We are not alone. In fact, we need to look everywhere for solutions. Not solutions from wealthy countries, from areas, from a place like New York that doesn't experience this. We need to look everywhere. We need to recognize that our neighbors who experience this know how to do this low-tech, high-tech, and they do it every year, and they do it better than us. And our hope is that within a decade, we will be contributing back to that idea pool so we can all be more resilient. So now back to the regularly scheduled program. We're going to ask for a little bit of help from these 2 little boys and a glass of water. Because to arm you today with something to take with you is my goal. To have you walk out of here to think that you can make a difference, to know you can make a difference, is where we need to stay today, right? So these are my 2 little boys, right? And so what kind of father would I be without getting them up here too? But these 2 little boys, in fact, taught me and my wife something about resilience that has changed our lives. Very small. So every day, we send them off to school with two bottles of water filled up every day. That's 5 days a week for the better part of a year. Plus on the weekends, we send them out to sports or to the playground, and they come back and sometimes those water bottles are empty or half full or sometimes even very full. And they suggested to us, well, why are you putting that down the drain? Why don't you water our plants with it? So guess what? We started watering our plants in our house. And we found within a week and a half we had to go and buy more plants because there was so much water. And I wasn't going to have any of that. This is New York. We have small places to live. We can't take it up with all these plants, right? So we decided to take a step back, open our eyes, and broaden our lens. And we started to water the plants outside. But my wife and I began to discuss the fact that where else can we make an impact? We decided to start harvesting water from our roof. And this is just getting going now. In New York City, we have several issues that pertain to water runoff. We have a combined system. We have an old city. And with a combined system, that means that many times a year, if it rains a little too much in a short amount of time, guess what happens? We have bacteria and waste backing up in our cellars, our basements, onto the streets where our children play. And we're always asking, when is the government going to fix this problem? So by implementing water harvesting, we've done two things. The first is that on average, we can get between 400 and 500 gallons of water that we use to water our garden and our neighbor's garden. We also relieve pressure on the system that cannot handle the amount of outflow. We're changing the conversation as to when is the government going to help us to what do we do with all this extra water? Isn't it nice to have extra water? Really quite wonderful. So if we take a look at this and we apply it to our communities, let's think about Red Hook. How many of you know Red Hook in Brooklyn? So, oh yes, I love that neighborhood, right? Between Superstorm Sandy and the end of June of this year, the number of calls to DEP for water outflow from the sewers, if you conflate it to days, was 28 instances in less than a calendar year. That's overflow from rain, melting snow, you name it. That is indicative of what happens in New York City. So resilience isn't about the one event. Resilience is about the entire year. It's about how we treat resources, people, and neighbors. So if we take a look at this, one community of 50 homes, the fact of the matter is if 1 in 3 building owners implements this, we no longer have to ask when our infrastructure is going to be fixed. It's where the conversation changes to where does the community garden go? And can we grow our own vegetables? Can we become more resilient and self-sufficient off the grid? But here's the other thing. So in addition to implementing this, helping our neighbor, and thinking about this to our neighborhood, how are we helping the rest of the world in terms of visceral resilience? If you think about it, or maybe you don't know this, in the United States, the average amount of water per day per person that's used, because a lot of people water their lawns and do all sorts of other things, is between 110 and 130 gallons of water per day. Let's put that on balance with our neighbors, because now we're part of this global community. In parts of Africa, people survive on less than 4 gallons of water per day, and in very extreme circumstances, less than 2 gallons a day. So when we do not turn on our taps as often as we do, I believe we're having an impact on a global scale. We're having an impact everywhere. And that's visceral resilience. And that's why these two little boys with one little idea can change the world. At least they've changed our world. My hope for you today is to understand that we are not alone in a very profound way, and that you today apply that rule of who is in front of me, who is behind me, who's to the right of me, and who is to the left of me, to everything that you do in your life, everything that you do at home. It doesn't have to be about water. Maybe it's about something else. And I'm hoping to see you at that next roundtable of discussion where we bring new ideas to change the world. Thank you very much.